Good morning. Today I'm in the studio and I'm continuing my theme of using 2 kilos of my very latest clay. Here you can see me removing some clay from the bag and weighing it on my very old scales. I'm also using some really old cast iron weights that we found in the property when we first moved in. My first job, as always, is to give the clay a thoroughly good wedging, making sure it's all a smooth consistency. And of course, there are no air pockets within the clay body itself. You will notice that this process has been speeded up because I do spend about 10 minutes doing this for each lump of clay. I then move directly to the wheel, where I begin the process of centering the clay. After making sure the wheel head is clean and free from any foreign bodies, I throw the clay hard onto the center of the wheel, or as close as I can get it. For me, the process of centering begins by gently slapping the clay into the center of the wheel whilst the wheel head is turning. I then add a little water and begin the centering process by moving the clay up and down until it finds perfect center. It may take several attempts at moving the clay up and down on the wheelhead before finding perfect center. However, once the clay appears to stop moving on a turning wheel, you know you have perfect center. When the clay is perfectly centered, I clean the wheelhead and remove any bits of clay and water that might inhibit my next move. The secret of working with clay is not to try and impose oneself on the material by using brute force, but to work with it, in conversation perhaps one might say, gently persuading the material to work with you to form the vessel you require at the end of the session. After centering the clay, the next job is to open it up. You can see here that I'm using 2 fingers on the inside of the clay and my hand gently applying pressure to the outside. This allows me to gently move the clay in an upward direction. And by pulling my fingers up the inside of the vessel against the pressure of my hand on the outside wall. I like to use my sponge to make sure I remove any excess water that may collect inside the vessel while I'm working on it. When I'm happy with the moisture removed and the walls in good shape, I can begin the process of pulling the clay up the wall to create the height of the vessel that I require today. I often find myself having committed schoolboy error and not having all the right tools close at hand. However, they're never really far away, and so the process continues. I'm using a small rib here just to firm the base, and then I'm using a pin tool to measure, to make sure that I have about 1 centimeter thickness of material at the bottom of the vessel. I take my time with this process, making sure everything's right and making sure the clay is fully compressed at the bottom of the pot I wish to create. As you can see from the video, I take my time to make sure everything is just right. Pottery is not something one should rush. As soon as I'm ready, I begin the process of coning the clay over to form what I like to call a small volcano shape. This gives me a thicker body of clay towards the top of the vessel walls, enabling me to make good, considered pulls of the clay, forming beautifully even walls. After every successful pull, I make sure to firm the rim and then cone the body of clay over again. I repeat this process time and time again until I have the exact thickness of wall I require. I've tried not to edit this part of the process too much. I feel it's essential that beginner potters see how much time it actually does take to make a decent pot without rushing, without performing for the cameras. I must add that it's a rather warm and humid day here at the Good Day Pottery Studio, so you can see that I need to keep wiping my brow. But the sweat isn't from hard work, I can assure you. Pulling a good lump of clay up the wall of the pot is always a very satisfying process. And it's a process that one should definitely never rush. As you can see from this part of the video, I always take great care never to pull past the rim of the pot. It is essential to always keep a firm and even rim when trying to pull tall vessels, and it's for this reason I stop my pull just short of the rim. I constantly repeat the process of coning the vessel over, firm the rim, and then make another pull to achieve the required height for the vessel I'm trying to create. As you can see, when trying to create this type of vessel, having hands like shovels is not always an advantage. But when one does eventually execute a really nice pull, the feeling of satisfaction is second to none, I can promise you. When I'm making this movement, a saying that one of my favourite uncles always used to repeat to me when I was younger, slowly, slowly, catchy monkey. It rings true, especially when trying to make a pot like this. After yet again paying particular attention to the rim of the vessel, I ensure that the vessel is thoroughly moist on the outside. This helps my hands slide over the clay without catching, as at this stage of the making process, catching or pulling the clay with dry hands could be utterly disastrous for the pot, as the walls are becoming thinner and thinner. When throwing a vessel in this style, I like to lean back every once in a while and have a good look at the shape to make sure everything is just right. You can see here that I'm using a rib to remove as much moisture from the outside of the pot as possible. This helps the pot stay firm. I do this towards the end of the pulling process, when I feel happy that I have the right shape of the pot. This helps the walls stay firm and helps me work more on the top of the vessel. Knowing that I have a firm base to work from is always reassuring. At this stage of the making process, I like to do everything slowly, taking my time, adjusting the vessel as I go, trying to keep the walls of the pot nice and dry, but my hands nice and moist with slip and water. Once I feel comfortable with the shape of the vessel, I give it a final stroke to make sure everything feels right, checking for any lumps or bumps or unevenness within the wall of the vessel. When I'm ready, I can turn my attention to the rim. You can see here that I'm gently coning the top of the pot over, giving myself space and clay at the top of the vessel, giving myself plenty of clay to form a wide and decadent rim. This was one of the most pleasing parts of creating this particular vessel. I use the fingers of both hands to move the clay and gently turn the rim outwards, giving the characterized wide rim, slim-bodied shape to the vessel that I've been working for. I constantly check for too much moisture and for any uneven parts of the pot with the rib, smoothing and drying as I go, and using the shape of the rib to actually turn the top of the vessel over, giving that characteristic wide rim that I'm trying to achieve. I use the wooden rib to dry off the top or internal part of the rim, as it once was, and then check every part of my pot once more, making sure every detail is just as I want it. Finally, I use my sponge on a stick to remove any remaining water inside the vessel. And once completed, I can sit back and say, there we are. Yet one more vessel created with 2 kilos of clay. Once I've finished fettling the majority of the pot, I use a piece of soft chamois leather. The chamois is dipped in a mixture of water and clay and rubbed along the rim of the vessel, making sure there are no uneven or rough edges that may cause problems later. The final part of making this creation is to take away any excess clay from the base of the vessel. I do this using a wooden knife. I make sure it's clean and free from any debris, and then I just remove any excess clay, forming a nice terminus to the base of my vessel. Once all these processes are complete, I can then sit back and have a look at what I might consider to be a fairly good vessel. Have a good day.